Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me, I've got a full house. Welcome, Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What's good, everyone?
Today, we'll be reviewing the 2023 Champions League final and all the action that came with that. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social media, both on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is at House of_Footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, if you're free to get in touch with us via email, we love hearing from you guys. And we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Let's dive straight into the action. Mac, Man City, of course, winners on the night. Joe, you and I were quite disappointed with the result, but I think it's fair to say, Mac, deserved winners. Man City, of course, capturing the treble. What were your overall thoughts on the game?
I would say quick 60-second reaction of how I thought the game went was Man City played as poorly as they could in a lot of ways, and Inter Milan played as well as they could in a lot of ways. But unfortunately, it still wasn't enough. So even Man City on their worst day, I would argue maybe for some of their players they were talking about after the game is that they played like very poorly. They played like shit, some of them would say. That they still came out and managed to be able to win this game. So you got to give them credit there. So an enthralling game. Wasn't as high scoring as maybe any of us would have wanted, but still a fair result based on how the season has played out.
Okay, I guess same question to you, Gio.
Yeah, no, I think it was because of City's level dropping. It kind of made it more even. But even though with that drop in form and performance, there are still levels to this game. There are a lot of things that Inter really didn't have an answer for. It didn't seem like City was all really under pressure too much. Yes, Inter had their chances, but you know, they're just not known to be super clinical, and it showed. Especially Lautaro Martinez, who obviously yes won the World Cup, but didn't have the most clinical World Cup either. So and you have a out of form Lukaku, who isn't known to be super clinical in front of goal in the last couple of years. So what can you say? The the team that was better fine tuned, and ready to play this match won, and it was City, and they won the treble.
Yeah, well, actually, I kind of disagree with you guys. I think it was a very entertaining match. Obviously, not a lot of goals. Chances weren't, I would say, back and forth as much as you'd expect. But still, overall, as a football fan, that was a very interesting game. Inter Milan obviously set up to combat a very offensive minded Man City. And Man City, like you guys said, weren't at their best, but still you could see the quality that they have, being able to um, keep possession in certain parts of the field, and then use their advantages, obviously in numbers, to get chances, dominate possession for the most part as well. Still, I think a very good game for them overall. Not obviously a 5-0 Man City win, but still overall, I think a great spectacle. And even though it was only 1-0, I think there was a lot more talking points that we can definitely dive into. But I guess just to start off with that, the starting 11s for both teams. One, I guess, surprising start from each team. Mac, you noted Nathan Ake and Akanji start for Man City, leaving Kyle Walker on the bench, who had been starting more recently in the latter stages of the Champions League and also as well in the FA Cup final. And on the Inter Milan side, Brozovic did play instead of Mkhitaryan from the start. Um, yeah, Mac, walk us through, I guess, the first half, I guess. Very cagey game, kind of what we expected. Is that sort of what you saw?
Absolutely. I thought both teams didn't really feel settled. That you can tell the nerves on both sides. I thought going into towards the end of halftime, if you're Inter Milan, if you're Inzaghi, you're absolutely thrilled with how your team has played. You on form, probably as I said earlier, is that's as best of a performance from the first 45 minutes that you could really want, where you really limited Man City to two opportunities really. Bernardo Silva in the 6th minute, and Haaland getting kind of a shot away that Onana stopped smartly. I would say aside from that, there wasn't really opportunities for Man City to kind of impose their will. Overall, throughout the game, Man City only had 55% possession, which is quite low in comparison to what you would think against a very defensive Inter Milan team are. But Inter shaped it up a little bit. I think they pressed out further than a lot of us were anticipating, as well as the change in formation from Pep was, again, left a lot of questions in the first 45 minutes of what's going on here, because as Ray, you had mentioned, is that Walker has more recently started in kind of a right back role, which then he would tuck in when John Stones steps up. The reverse happened where John Stones was started off playing right back and then would tuck in from there. And then it was like a diamond of a midfield, which I thought was a kind of an unusual choice. Again, you can't really fault Pep because they had gone on to win the game. But 45 minutes, you're asking a lot of questions to Man City of, are they going to play well? Did they overthink it? Maybe they didn't make the right formation changes, as well as Inter playing well enough defensively, kind of keeping out major opportunities. And can they pose a threat going deeper into the second half as they wanted? So I think for the first half, Inter Milan should have been very, very happy.
Very, very happy indeed. And of course, we don't like to see injuries happen to footballers, but, KDB going down and being forced into a substitution would have definitely been, for a lot of Inter fans, maybe a sign that this was maybe their day. And going forward, Gio, Inter did look like all their chances were, didn't get too many in the first half, but every time they went forward, they would go with numbers, your wide players joining up, and looked like they had a plan on how to sort of take those chances that were coming few and far between, but still they had sort of an approach. What do you think about that, Gio?
Yeah, no, I thought, it was kind of like almost even more of a wake up call when, unfortunately, KDB was subbed off. That one of their top guys, if not their top three guy, is off the pitch now. But with that being said, um, you know, the depth of City just speaks volumes to the game of football. It's kind of unfair almost, some would say, but to Inter's point, it's yeah, no, it was definitely a wake up call for them. If we're gonna get chances, we're gonna get chances now. Um, if things were gonna play into our favor, things are literally playing into our favor now. Obviously, nobody wishes injuries upon anyone, but that was the case, and that's what happens. And they took their chances. Even after City scoring their goals, they still were executing the way that they planned to, they intended to, creating fairly decent chances. Um, but I think overall, I think they should be very proud of how they played through execution. Again, I was even surprised that in terms of possession and shots on goal, that it was that close up until the 60 odd minutes. So yeah, no, they executed very well. But KDB coming out was definitely a huge wake up call for them, and it showed. And they had another spark of energy, kind of kicked it into another gear.
Yeah, I mean, it's always tough for someone to come in, especially in the first half of a game, Champions League final. But Foden, I think, played decently well enough and definitely provided something different that Kevin De Bruyne would have uh, gave you on his day. But I guess let's go into the goal that's I guess decided this match. Well played through Man City, and then the sort of the ball is played through by Kanji. The cutback is deflected, and then of course Mac, the best center defensive midfielder in the world, buries that. What are your thoughts about that, Mac?
He's not even the best defensive midfielder on his team. I don't know what we're talking about.
Oh,
Man of the match to me, in my opinion, hot take, was John Stones. I think
fair.
arguably he played better than everybody on Man City. It's just that the goal makes the difference. So that's why Rodri, of course, would get it. I understand the semantics of this. But I think the key part, and what really sticks out to me in that goal, I know it's a small little thing where Bernardo Silva, when you see him about to cut back the ball, I forgot who was defending him in that moment. Was it DeMarco or was
Was
it
it the slip?
or Bastoni? No, because when he cuts it back for Roger to come onto, if you look at the defender shape, you see the impact of the handball rule where everybody lined up has their arms tucked and not ready for like a deflection or that second action, or it seems like that split second that they could have maybe got a better touch on the ball could have had the impact there where Roger wouldn't have the amount of time and space, or even the opportunity to kind of latch onto it. But that side foot finish is every single time you watch it, it just looks better and better and better because he picked the perfect spot because Onana has no chance of seeing it, goes right around two Inter players that could have been there to potentially block it. So even though it looked like a fairly easy opportunity on first glance, the more you watch it, the more you can kind of really appreciate it. And it was fair because he scored a lot of big goals for this Man City team. Not a lot of goals, but a lot of big goals for this team throughout the Champions League in particular, from my recollection. So I was glad to see him be able to lump on and get in the box. And for me, it was one of the few times where Man City looked to have 5 or 6 players even competing for a ball in the box there, because it wasn't just him. He was arriving late, but from my memory, you had Jack Grealish, you had Bernardo Silva, of course, dribbling inside the box. You had Holland in the box, as well as Gundogan in the box. So you had 4 or 5 City players barging in and Inter collapsing, which gave Roger more space, which didn't happen a whole lot of times throughout the game. And I would argue this was one of 4 clean-cut chances really for City to score. It was the 3rd one of the game. Foden had one shortly later, but Roger was the man to be able to take advantage of that free space. So it was a goal worthy of this game for sure.
Yeah, great goal overall. But and we're gonna now talk about obviously the missed chances on Inter's end that could have brought this game to maybe extra time, or even Inter could have won it in regular time. But obviously before that, we have the Akanji back pass that sort of the backpack that pass is played back in sort of between Ederson and Akanji. They don't really get it sorted, and Lautaro and Gio sort of, I think, mentioned that earlier. His clinicalness wasn't able to make the most out of that, but of course Lukaku did come on later, had some chances, and Gio, of course, former Manchester United forward Romelu Lukaku. It was never gonna be, I guess, for us, hopes for a Man City downfall if we have all of our hopes for Lukaku. What do you think, Gio?
Um, as a striker, I'm just curious as to how you don't really finish that. I know it's spur of the moment. It's tough. You want to get it on target, but does he? If he steps into it, maybe he gets a little bit more power behind it. Anywhere but down the middle. Anywhere like away from the keeper. He could have even played it with his feet. I I genuinely felt like it was very possible for him to play with his feet, uh, get up there and play with his feet. But it's nothing I haven't seen before from Lukaku, unfortunately.
Sorry, which I thought, because which chance are you talking about? Because I think were you talking
Oh,
about the back pass for Martinez?
oh,
Oh, I briefly mentioned that, but
Oh, my apologies. I didn't know which chance you were going to.
no, I'm just talking in general, especially that last chance he
Ah,
had to
okay,
get a
gotcha.
goal. He could have even played it with his feet. Very, very possibly could have played it with his feet. A player of his athleticism and shown that he can, you know, uh, bro, you're a professional footballer. You're quite flexible. You can play with your feet. I promise you, brother. But he didn't. No power. But hey, credits to credits to Ederson, who apart from the great chances Inter had, he was making phenomenal saves to keep him in the game. You know, he, it could have been very argued that a keeper, you know, this time around stole another Champions League, much like how
exactly.
Courtois stole a Champions League. He was just very on top of on he was on top of his head. You know, yeah, we always talk about how he's very good with his feet. How strong his back line is. Uh, yeah, no, at the end, behind the back line is a very good keeper at the end of the day. So, elite level keeper who is the starter for, can arguably be 1A, 1B on the national team. It just comes down to preference. But yeah, no, I think Inter had great chances, but as good as their chances were, we have to give credit to Ederson for some fine saves and a very good performance in the finals.
Yeah. If I recall correctly, Nicky Bandini on Twitter mentioned, against Man City, if they are 1-0 up in a final, you're gonna get 2, 3 chances at most, and you're gonna have to finish them. for Inter. Unfortunately, they did play great overall, I think, but obviously, as we know, we're not able to finish their chances. And Gio, this game is a game of margins. You gotta finish your chances, or it's not gonna be a successful day for you. But apart from that, Mac. Lastly, I guess any matchups or key battles in the game that maybe stood out to you regarding this game?
I just want to touch on quickly the chances towards the end of the game for Inter. One, the Martinez one, when he did latch onto it, he just made the wrong decision in terms of this was right before Manchester City ended up scoring. Because if he a split second earlier, if he shot that, then he might have had a better chance to beat Ederson maybe between the 5 hole. Or if he did that touch and then chose to be able to pass it into Lukaku, it's that he chose wrong on both accounts, where he waited too long and then tried the shot, in my opinion. Later on, for those, again, DeMarco off the crossbar, again, it ended up being where the expected goals for Inter Milan here were double of what Man City had. So, or by those chances, you would have thought maybe odds on one of them or even two of them, the odds are stating that they should have gone in. It was just unfortunate. I feel you got to feel for Lukaku because he's going to feel the brunt of it on Twitter, kind of given everything that he's had in his career. But to block the DeMarco, the second header, as well as that opportunity where I don't know if it's more of a miss or more of a save. It's tough because for me, I really fault his body position, because if you watch how his body's facing, going for that header towards the last minute, his whole body shifted towards the left-hand side, like facing towards his left-hand side, and the position of his foot, he doesn't have the opportunity to open it up to try to be able to hit it far post. So it's just a positioning mistake because he's tussling with, I think it was Ruben Diaz there in the box, where that's the reason why it closed the opportunities for Ederson to be able to make that save. It very much reminds me of this was quite a few years ago in the Champions League, where you made that Neuer save on Theo Walcott from close range, where he just makes that dive across. It's the exact same thing. It's just the positioning poorly to set him up, where it gives the goalkeeper the opportunity, and a goalkeeper of class enough is able to get across there and get a good touch. Even the deflection there, I thought was going back into the net, but Ruben Diaz luckily just kind of scraped it over the line for a corner kick. In terms of, right, to jump to your question though, in terms of individual matchups, I really thought a lot of key players for Man City probably had some of their poor games in these last couple of games. I'm talking of Gundogan didn't play really well in this game. I would argue Rodri didn't play very well in this game as well. Jack Grealish, in the interviews afterwards, talked about how poorly he played, where a lot of those matchups in the midfield for City, they weren't a win. They're in a lot of cases a neutral, or some places a loss, where going into the game, because of their class, because of how well they played throughout the season, you would expect them to play much better. So for me, it really was that midfield battle being as even as was led to Inter Milan having enough chances to easily could have won this game, or at least taken into extra time. So that's what stood out to me. And of course, the only thing that kept Man City in the game was my boy John Stones, of course, as you know, pure class.
Hey, great performance for him. But I guess the last thing, Gio, we've seen Spurs give City trouble. I think Brentford played a similar style to Inter and give them trouble in the Premier League. This game was very, very close. Is this sort of a template moving forward for teams to sort of stifle City's chances when they do come up against them? Do you think it just drop deep? Holland didn't have too many chances. Of course, there were three defenders in and around him at all times. Do you think this is sort of like the way everyone should approach facing City? What do you think?
Um, I just don't know how much success you're gonna have. You're gonna have to be extremely
Yeah,
clinical, and
yeah.
you're gonna catch them on an off day where you can bag a couple, but you can play a very well executed counter attacking game and still lose 2-3-0 against the City side. It was 1-0 here, but let's talk about chances City missed. Phil Foden, amazing turn, splits the defenders and just shanks the shot a little. That should have been 2-0. That should have been game there. Done and dusted. Signed, sealed, and delivered. But he happened to miss that chance. And again, we're talking about an Inter team or an Inter side that executed, you know, almost to a T. They had 3-4 chances, couldn't convert on those 3-4 chances. And then one City just needs just just a little bit of a lane, and they're able to kind of exploit. It kind of worked out in a sense. Because KDB doesn't usually get into those lanes and everything like that. But a guy like Phil Foden, after he's gotten comfortable on the ball a little bit more, has had time on the pitch. You can see that his movement was a little too shifty for Inter to deal with, uh, especially a tired Inter line who's kind of been running up and down the pitch, trying to get their chances. So yeah, no, it is a blueprint. I think most teams will take anything that they can get against the City side. But again, execution has to be perfect on any certain day to kind of really beat this City side.
Yeah, exactly. And so now let's take a quick break here, and then we'll talk about what this overall means for both teams. So stay with us, guys. Welcome back to Hustle Footy, guys. We are going to continue our podcast now, discussing overall thoughts about this Man City Champions League win. Gio, obviously this was the biggest trophy that Man City were looking to get this season. They finally done it. What did this mean for them?
Uh, well, now that they're in the conversation of Champions League winners, it comes down to their hunger to thrive for more. As coveted as the Champions League is, you start comparing yourselves, with the Madrids, with the Liverpools, with the Uniteds, how many can we win, and how long do we need to dominate for in order for us to comfortably be in that conversation for one of the greatest clubs in the world, a top five club, a top three club in the world. Um, it's looking like that. It's gonna look and it's looking like it's leading to in that direction. Teams, players are looking and wanting to play for a club like City now. It's not just a money funded club where they're just simply buying random players. It's obvious that Pep has a game plan, and Pep is very selective with his signings, and here it shows how you know just how good his signings can be. And if you think you're not an integral part, it's more so a next man up mentality, and how you fill the other guy's shoes. There's no such thing as garbage minutes with them. Even in garbage time, um, as we've seen in the Prem, they're always looking for, how are we going to keep the ball? How are we going to keep the ball more effectively? How can we switch the ball in certain situations and kind of open up the pitch that way? So yeah, I think they have a good formula going right now. I think the biggest thing is how is upper management going to keep Pep happy and keep that hunger coming from Pep to want to succeed more and win more Champions League for years to come.
Yeah, great achievement for Man City, Mac. A lot of those players we can talk about and give them their plaudits, as you did with John Stones in the first part. But for all, I guess, this whole group, is there one or two players that sort of stand out in terms of this means a lot more for them rather than maybe others? What do you think?
In some ways, I think listening to Holland talk about it afterwards, like this is what he really was signed for, is that the minimum expectation was win the Premier League. So because he's like, oh, they won the last like couple seasons. I think it's like 4 of the last 5 or whatever. So he was like, he came in and was like, if we drop off from that, it's a failure. And this is what they brought me in here for. So it was the expectations. But you got to feel for some of the kind of the older players that have been around the City project for a long time, where it's been since 2008 they were taking over, and this was been their primary goal. Pep came in 7 years ago. This has been their primary goal, and for them to finally achieve it. So players like Gundogan, who came with them, KDB, early entry players like that, Bernardo Silva. This is something that they've really have strived for, and brings a whole lot of credit to their club and their project. There unfortunately is that elephant in the room in terms of the finance stuff that maybe we won't get into, but that may cloud it eventually. But as of right now, there has to be a whole lot of happy campers, a whole lot of kind of promises kept in terms of how this team is needed to perform. And now they're in the conversations with one of world football's best team, given just in one season, because this is the seventh time a team has won a treble, second English one, the most recently happening in '99 with Manchester United, with their treble. So they're right there in that conversation, and this team will then go down as legends, where just as people look back at that '99 Manchester United team, they could look very similar back, where I know a lot of clubs, they talk about, oh, we have this history. We have this history. This is Man City's history. So 30 years from now, everyone will be pointing to this as like, this is what they were, this is what they've been able to do. And you can't really take it away from them. So, it's definitely great to see a lot of these players in some ways earn their statues, that they're going to get outside of the Etihad Stadium, right?
Oh, yo, if oh man, by the way they played, there's going to be a lot of statues coming in the next few years. But obviously, plaudits for a lot of those players. But ultimately, the Grand Pup Master Pep Gio, this is obviously his second treble win, and now with a different club. What I guess what are your words on Pep's legacy? Can is he up there now as obviously one or two of the greatest managers ever? And overall, what does this mean for him?
Yeah, I think he's definitely has put his foot in that conversation, if not already. Just the way he's able to get the guys to rally and to kind of regain focus, in short period of times, and kind of instill that every game matters. And although they had a rough start to the season, consistency will get you to where you want to be, and they did it, they stayed consistent, and they waited for their opportunity. They're very patient. In catching Arsenal and then surpassing Arsenal, and then to secure the title, one there, and then to face a United side that, again, all the punditry was saying, how Man City was, it was an off day for City. How do we bounce back from that game? Again, although they didn't play the greatest game here, they bounced back. It's very simple. It's very easy for a team to kind of lose focus, concede one early, and then and then managers hit the panic button. But Pep has had a clear plan from the very beginning, brought in the right guys from the very beginning, and has laid a great foundation for years to come. So yeah, definitely think he's definitely earned that right to be in that conversation.
All right, Mac, go ahead, cook. I know you're
Okay,
ready.
so in terms of this, I do agree with Gio. He was already in this conversation. I think this just might put himself in his tier alone in the conversation, where a lot of people are talking about. You compare him to Jose Mourinho, Sir Alex Ferguson, managers of that ilk. Where he's the only manager to have two different treble winning sides with two different clubs. So he's been able to do it in England and in Spain, which no other manager has done. So a lot of the talk was going into his Man City experiences where he wouldn't be able to bring this type of football, wouldn't be able to play this type of way and still be successful. He's not just done that; he's done that and more. With this type of season, it'll be interesting to see how does the motivation build up, because that's always been. He's always been a manager that's only been around for a short time per se, where this is his longest tenure. Does it continue? Oh, I assume it does, but for how much longer? And I think that'll really be up to him. But without a doubt, he's put himself in a conversation where he might stand alone, where there might not be that, oh, what about him? Oh, what about him? It's like, no, it's a clear answer. It's I'm not as familiar with it. Maybe Gio, you might be a little bit more familiar with it than I. But in terms of like hockey, where it is Wayne Gretzky. Like we can bring up Lemieux, that's cool, but like we all know like what's happening here, right? It's something of that ilk where you still want to give other people respect, but it might just be clear at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can't look at his resume, look at what he's won. You really can't discount any of that. And of course, with Man City winning this Champions League and performing, well, being making an appearance in the Champions League final. I think Mac, you noted here, out of the last six Champions League finals, at least five of them had a team from the Premier League, and seven out of the last 12. And we obviously cover a lot. We cover predominantly the Premier League, Geo, more so than other leagues. Apart from that, only Real Madrid has had sort of more than one final appearance in, I guess, in the recent years. What are your thoughts on sort of English teams dominating this competition for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, no, I think we talked about it, right? I think there's eight English teams in European football now.
Right?
That's dominance in my books, and there's a reason why, say, eight eight European spots can are like given to the Premier League because people want to see English football because English football is hard hitting. English football can be technical. There's a lot of layers to English football, and that's why players want to. A lot of players are attracted to play in the Prem, and yeah, I think for years to come, you know they won't be short of talent. So they'll definitely get there. It's a matter of just you know keeping sort of, I guess, more so not the teams but the competition still entertaining. As we know, with that's a different story for a different day, but like the Super League and things of that nature, kind of trying to kind of fight with the Champions League in a way. But yeah, as long as the competition stays interesting, and stays, to use Mac's word, enthralling, then there will be plenty of English teams playing in these Champions League finals for years to come.
Yeah, for sure. On the flip side, though, for the Serie A, three European finals for three different teams. Unfortunately for them, all three of them lost in the finals, which is disappointing. But we're really going to focus now on Inter Milan, Mac. A lot of those, a lot of those players, as we talked about in our preview, are sort of looking. They'll be looked at as potentially leaving the club. I know that there's also like controversy behind the ownership and what they're going to do next, but it's pretty obvious. Edin Dzeko in his late 30s. Lukaku is a Chelsea player, and that back line, not in their youngest years. A big overhaul there. What are your thoughts on what they could do there, Mac?
I think you addressed it up at the front. Edin Dzeko's 37, and Lukaku, as you said, is a Chelsea player, which is still hilarious whenever I think about it. That's the primary concern of what you do there, because Lautaro Martinez, I think he's 25, so he's still young. He's still in the prime of his footballing years, so he can theoretically still grow and become a better player. But the reason why he works so well is because he's able to play off a big man, very traditional big man, small man strike force, where if he doesn't have to partner with them, it'll be very interesting to see how well he does play. And Dzeko can only give you 60 minutes now, and if at 38 next year, maybe a half, and Lukaku not there, it'll be very interesting to see. I think that's their primary concern. You can see though, and something that I think you spoke to very well in our previous podcast, where you see the template of how they can play defensively and how well they can do there, and that is a platform for success for any club. Where if you can keep control of your own mistakes, keep your controllables in your own hands, where if we just make sure that the opponent doesn't get these easy things, and we are still in our moment, still clinical enough up front, we can beat almost any team in the world. I think that's definitely their platform. But what they'll have to address is that strike force, what else they're going to do there. And it's going to be expensive because a lot of other big teams are in the market for strikers. The Canes, the Osimhens. There's not just one or two teams looking at them. There's 3, 4, 5, 6 teams looking to sign just a couple of those players. So I think it'll be difficult. I would be very, very surprised if we see them anywhere near this deep in this competition next year. I'd be surprised if they make it out of the quarters, to be honest. Maybe even make it to the quarters. You'd be surprised. But you still want to give them credit because the season that they had in the Champions League, and how well of a cup competition team they've been this year. Like I said, I'd be surprised if they're able to keep it up. But they still deserve their flowers, their credit for making it this far.
Yeah, they obviously surprised a lot of us neutrals getting there to the final. And as you mentioned, with sort of what's going to happen in the offseason, you don't really expect them to make it as far as they've done this year. Gio, guess question to you, and I know you love these hypotheticals. Brozovic, 30 years old, Mkhitaryan, 34, on loan from AS Roma, and of course the other midfielder, Çalhanoğlu, I believe he is 29. Not a really young midfield, of course. Lautaro has been linked with moves away from Inter before. And of course, one of the star players, Andre Onana, who is obviously going to be number one if he stays at Inter, with Samir Handanovic being 38 years old. Could they look at this team, Gio, and just say, you know what? We're most likely not going to achieve what we did this year. Let's blow it up, get as much money as we can, recoup, and then sort of invest in maybe your Barellas, your Bastonis, the younger guys, and sort of build that up with years to come. Kind of like what AC Milan have done over the last couple of years. Is that an option for them? What do you think, Gio?
I think it's very well an option. And just kind of reinvest in those younger guys, and I don't think there's any shame in it. Teams have done this before, and there's a plethora of talent out there for you to really um kind of go out there and kind of pick and choose who you want and how you want to build this team. I think more so it'll come down to the manager, if the manager wants to stay for that project. But it wouldn't be a bad idea at all. I think they can salvage a lot for the likes of Barella. I think a lot of Italian teams, even for one, would love to salvage this team. I think they're, especially some of the older guys who are considered old. But they do have one thing younger players don't, and that's experience. So teams are very willing to pay for experience and will pay top dollar during the transfer market. So I think that's a very good idea, and should definitely hold these players. Just keep them in the back pocket, if they want to make some money and kind of want to head that direction. It'll kind of We'll kind of see if it heads in that direction based on their table standings near the transfer window area. Um, but if a great offer comes in the summer, I don't see why not.
Yeah, and it's not uncommon to see a lot of those players in sort of their 30s moving across different clubs in the Serie A. Of course, something that has happened with big name players as well. And so definitely something interesting to see, and keep an eye out for what happens for this area with obviously a new league winner, and Juventus with their troubles. You have your AC Milan trying to come back up to sort of their glory days. So exciting to see in the Italian league. But of course, we will be covering in our next podcast a more comprehensive review of our Premier League season review. So, with that said, this concludes our podcast for today. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at House of underscore Footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Next time you hear from us will be Friday, when we will likely be throwing eggs on our faces with us revealing our preseason predictions for this 2022-2023 league campaign. Thank you, Mac, for joining us. Any words on that future podcast that will be dropping next week?
Odegaard should have won PFA Player of the Year. I'm so sad. I'm so sad.
and Gio?
As long as I don't come last, hey, I'm happy.
Exactly. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough, but I'm excited to share that with you guys. See you guys soon.